Hello, you're listening to the iFanboy Pick of the Week, episode 974. My name is Conor Kilpatrick, and sitting in for my co-host Josh Flanagan this week is Dr. Ryan Haupt.
Hi, everybody. I hope Josh is enjoying his new role as a lighthouse keeper. I think it's a good choice for him.
It was going to happen eventually. His New England upbringing, his misanthropy, his desire for quiet, his love of the sea. It's going to happen. So, welcome to iFanboy 2025. It's our 20th year of doing this show and our 25th year of doing iFanboy. And that means that every week for 25 years, one of us has picked the book they like the best from their stack of comics. We call that book the Pick of the Week. We'll talk about that book, other books of the week, the Patron Pick, listener mail. We'll have a fun time. Hopefully you do too. And now here's your spoiler warning. Exercise some caution. Ryan, this was a fifth week that wasn't like a fifth week at all. I had 20 books.
A lot of, well, it was like a fifth week in that I would say
the choices were fifth weeky.
Yeah, not a super strong week of books. And I was actually having to explain to Julie the concept of the fifth week over dinner. She wasn't familiar with that term in the comics publishing world. I say that it wasn't a super strong week of books, but I am actually really happy with what ended up as the pick, which is Red Hulk #3 by Benjamin Piercy, art by Jeff Shaw, colors by Brian Valenza, and letters by Corey Pettit. This is its second time as pick in 3 issues, so I think that says something. And this is a continuation of the story. I thought issue 2 had an excellent cliffhanger where Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross and his Deathlock and Machine Man and the other guy make it out of the prison. And there's a giant.
Scratch my back while you talk.
There's a giant
feels good.
group of Doombots assembled into a mega Doombot.
So cool.
Yeah, great visual. Looks really good. It was commented on. I wasn't on the show the week it was picked previously, but Jeff Shaw's art is great for this book. I love the way he draws Deathlock. It actually looks like an animated corpse. I love the way he draws Ross to he's a fit but still old man. He's not a
looks like Scott Glenn, kind of. Not exactly. He doesn't look like him, but that kind of where you get older and you get more sinewy. You get not more fit, but you sort of like suck in, and that's kind of how he draws him here.
I love the way he drew Doom at the UN with the Sorcerer Supreme garb. I thought that was an excellent rendition of Doom. So, and I really liked the story. I'm a person. One of the key ideas that's introduced in this issue is General Ross keeps a lot of maps in his head of places that he may need to go into conflict with
militarily speaking.
Yeah. And so he knows that there's a nuclear plant nearby, and if he can just get to the plant, then he can get charged back up and be Red Hulk again. And so they're trying to escape the Doombots and get to the nuclear plant. And I really liked, I'm a person who thinks in maps a lot. I'm a very spatially oriented person. I think it has to do with sort of I think that's true for a lot of people with geology training. You really think in the world in terms of maps and spaces and distances. So I thought that was really cool. I really liked, the environment that they're in, the sort of snowy mountainous region where they're using the snow to confuse the Doombot sensors, and they're flinging Machine Man around as a weapon because his batteries need to be recharged. And I really like Machine Man. I'm excited to see how Benjamin Pearson writes Aaron Stack once presumably he comes back online. So I think there was a lot to like about this book. And I thought one of the things that stuck out to me when I was thinking about what book to make the pick is this book worked on every level, and the title character technically doesn't appear. There is no Red Hulk in this book.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I was like, that's good storytelling if I'm still engaged, even without the title character appearing on a single page. So,
I guess Ross is technically Red Hulk, but this is great. This book is really good. It's probably the best pound for pound tie-in for One World Under Doom.
I agree.
There are other ones that are really fun too, but this one has been interesting and different. The idea of sort of stuck behind enemy lines during this war, and then at one point,
everyone's favorite Owen Wilson movie.
Ross doesn't even realize what's happening really, because he gets out of the prison. And he tells
that's true. Yeah,
he thinks to like call for the troops to come pick him up, and they're like, "Sorry, we can't. We got a treaty with Latveria now because of Emperor Doom." And he's like, he doesn't understand because he's been in prison for so long. The Jeff Shaw art is terrific. The design choices, the renderings of the characters. His Doom is scary, as you said. His Deathlock is appropriately creepy. I still love the image and the idea. So this is credit to Benjamin Percy as well of the multi Doombots coming together, not as Voltron, but as sort of like a giant hologram that Doom talks through. That's really cool. I like this Doom. I like all Dooms. All Dooms are welcome in my household, but I'm happy we haven't seen in a while sort of the evil Doom. I like evil Doom. Doom's a great supervillain, and yeah, it's fun when he plays in the gray areas and stuff, but ultimately he's one of the best supervillains, so it's nice to see him back and being intimidating and being scary. And you said the scene of him in the United Nations where he's talking to everybody on his throne, but he's called away because of Ross was really great. The drawing's terrific. It's a fun little. I mean, like, it's interesting because, like, you know, I know Ross vaguely from the Hulk comics. I read the Red Hulk story. I don't remember much about it. I didn't remember he had to be charged up to become Red Hulk. In the 90s, I didn't care much about Deathlock at all. It just wasn't. It's part of that whole sort of milieu of comics I didn't care about. Sort of the edgy, more violent side. Machine Man is, you know, Machine Man, but it's a really interesting and fun group. And they're very different, but they're very similar. And then there was this other fourth dude who was a jerky supervillain military guy. He goes away pretty quickly, but it's just fun. I like this a lot. I like, you know,
I like the ending where Doom is apparently going to try to Sorcerer Supreme away the nuclear plant, and I think that seems like a big lift even for the Sorcerer Supreme. So I'm kind of curious to see how that goes. There was a fantasy series I read back in college where the elves in this world, with their access to magic, one of the elves in a magic sense figures out E equals MC squared. And so they figure out if they convert matter to energy, it'll release a bunch of power. And so, like, they basically figure out magic nukes, but then they don't understand the radiation fallout from it. And so, like, there are these areas of the world that had these magic nukes go off and are now irradiated, and the elves don't understand why everyone gets sick when they go back there.
Ouch.
I just kind of was thinking about the confluence of nuclear power and magic and how that might play out. And I'm curious to see if we get introduced to any concepts that we haven't really seen in the 616 before. So yeah, just a really solid issue. And I like I said, I agree with you, pound for pound, the best.
Yeah.
One World.
It even has a bit of Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid in it, in that they're being chased constantly. And I guess technically Deathlock and Machine Man are handcuffed together, but they even have the, you know, jump off a cliff into a river, you know, cliffhanger here for the heroes. So it's just a fun. It's propulsive. The characters are fun. The art's terrific. It's a really good looking book. I like all the different facets of One World Under Doom. You know, there's political facets. There's magical. Like, you know, we had Doom Academy this week, and it wasn't at all about the conflict. It was just about the characters living in the world. So there's all kinds of ways you can play this story. Which is funny because, like, there's all these other Marvel books where this is not happening at all. That's just the nature of comics. But I
like Benjamin Piercy writing Thunderbolt Ross Benjamin Percy writing Thunderbolt Ross as a very strategic thinker. Like, I like the way his intelligence is represented in the book, the way he solves problems, the way he thinks through situations and scenarios. It feels very on point with someone who's, you know, got a very advanced military mindset.
Yeah, and this is great. I mean, you don't need a ton of backstory on these characters if you don't know much about Red Hulk or Ross. And look, they made this book because of the Captain America movie. They ended up being, you know, what it was. But it doesn't matter if it's good, and this is a really good book. So
yep,
I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. Void Rivals 18.
Yeah, I would say this was my runner-up for pick. I've really been enjoying this series. I lost the plot a little bit with the Cobra Loss stuff. I'm not as discussed previously. See previous episodes of iFanboy, for me not being more of a Transformers guy than a G.I. Joe guy. So I'm holding on less well with that storyline, but and I still don't really know any of the names, any of the characters, but the girl one gets upgraded with some Cybertronian tech, which was cool. And the boy one has like a real heart-to-heart with his father and realizes that there's a deeper reason for keeping the two cultures separated. And so he now is not on the side of unification, which puts him at odds with the girl one that he should have been, you know. And so it's very good Kirkman-y twists and turns. Everyone's constantly kind of changing sides, learning new information. Multiple storylines are happening at once. He's jumping around, and it ends on a really good cliffhanger. So just
I think one of the strengths of this book is that it doesn't require any kind of deep knowledge of either Transformers or G.I. Joe. It's just a good sci-fi book. And then the Lorenzo Di Felice art's really, really good. I think he's a really good Transformers artist. Like the way he draws the Transformers is really compelling and nice and clean. I think whenever I start to feel like we're just going in circles, that's always when an issue comes out like this, where there's something major happens in the story. So like I'm always like, all right, we got the two characters. They're essentially from the same race, but they're different. They're separated, and they don't like each other. But they don't know it. Are they ever going to get together? And now it's just like, okay, now we've made a step forward. Something has happened. They came together, and the guy's like, never mind. We're not gonna unify. Like this book was always on the edge of being like, come on, Kirkman, get us moving. But then whenever I feel that way, something like this issue comes out where there are major things that happen, and I thought this.
And I like that as part of her Cybertronian upgrade, she now kind of can jack Hawksmoor, the ring structure that they live on, and she can like get the ring to like send her to different parts of its structure automatically. And I was like, oh, that's a cool concept that allows her to like zip around in fun ways. I thought the guy one being like, so about that, like in the unification, like literally like putting his hands together, I could just hear that so distinctly in my head as a voice. And then I am a somewhat, I don't know if we've ever talked about this before, but I'm somewhat of a sucker for a well-named letters page, and I laugh every time I see Talk to the Handroid.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
So the letters page does tell us that we're getting a new artist next issue, so that's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Don't love it, but we'll see. Well, I'll give it an open mind. But the Lorenzo Di Felice art has been really integral to this. The look and the feel of it, the tech and the worlds and the character designs are all very specific, and they look really good when he does it. So we'll see. We'll see what another artist does. But I'm not freaking out quite yet. But I mean, it is. I've given this book to people who don't really read G.I. Joe and Transformers, and it's just a good sci-fi book. People, just like it for that reason.
Yeah, and in some ways, it like does feel like the stories. It feels a little bit like the stories I would tell myself as a kid when I'm mashing the action figures together, which is kind of I think that's what it's supposed to be. I think that's intended as the vibe. And
obviously, it lays much more heavily on the Transformer side. We got Transformers in the book. There, Cybertron's a big portion of it. There's like a little bit of G.I. Joe. It's not really. It's like a little dollop of it. It's not a huge amount. It's also the worst part of G.I. Joe. So
is the Cobra stuff?
Yeah, it's very easy to dismiss, not worry about it. I mean, I don't even know I guess was that them in the beginning?
They weren't in this issue, but
yeah, I didn't think they were at all. Yeah, so it's fine. The less Cobra Law, the better. That's funny because we get our review copies from Image, and they also sent the new trade. And I started reading it thinking it was this. And I was like, I don't know. What? Like, didn't all this happen already? And then I was like, why is this issue 132 pages? And I looked, it was volume 3 and not number 18. I was like, oh, you're an idiot. And I read like 30 pages
That's about, comics where I think I've gotten, we've all gotten used to comics being 20 to 22 pages. And so I never know, because when you're reading digitally, you never know if it's an oversized issue, but I have sort of an internal clock, and I'll reach a point where I'll be like, hang on a second, I've been reading this for longer than I should have. And I'll usually check, and that's when I'm on page like 26, 27 of 35, 40.
It tells you how long the week was for me when I didn't catch it. I already read that stuff. And that also tells you a little bit about the book itself, which we were talking earlier, has gone in some circles. But, I was like, well, maybe there's like a lot of variants, because we've gotten that before where they put all the variants in the digital file, so the file's super long. It's like, man, maybe there are 100 variants. I don't know. And then I was like, no, I think this is wrong. I scrolled back to the cover. I was like, oh, that clearly says volume 3 on it. I just didn't even look. I'm an idiot. It's been a long week. I'm tired. So I'm going to take a quick cat nap. We'll be back right after this with more comics. Detective Comics 2025 annual number 1. I like annuals. You like annuals. We all like annuals. This has got a main story written by Al Ewing with Stefano Raphael, John McCrae, and Fico Ossio on art, and then a backup story. Not a back story, just a second story from Joshua Hale Fialkoff. Remember him? And art by Mike Norton, friend of the show. You know what? I liked this. I'm not usually a big Al Ewing fan, but I enjoyed the main story, the sort of locked room mystery of it.
Yeah, I would say I also enjoyed this. The thing, Had some Kieran Gillen vibes, which I think he and Al are friends, so that's probably not maybe not accidental, or like it felt sort of, there was, especially with it taking place in Great Britain, in York specifically,
right.
That it sort of had some things that reminded me of like a Once and Future or a Phonogram. I liked the concept of a book that has an equation that'll causes the universe to have its own observer effect and therefore blink out of existence. Like, that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
I thought this book suffered from, I thought the main story suffered from the art changes. So it's sort of told in 3 parts and you get a different artist for each part. And
they're very different styles. I liked them all. I mean, I thought the Fico Ocio art almost looked like kind of Neil Adamsy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I love John McCrae. I mean, we talked about old Vertigo artists on the last Booksplode, and he's such a seminal artist from that period. And I mean, individually, I thought they were all good. Agreed. But they're all very different. What I liked about it was that, we talk all the time, Batman's always being thrust into world-ending stories, and this was just him solving a murder. Like,
right.
Literally, someone was murdered, and he has to go to solve it, and sends him across the globe. And with a lot of comics I read as a kid from the Bronze Age, he was always going all over the place. He would go to England, he would go to China, he would go wherever he had to go. There was a lot of globe-trotting Batman in the 70s. And so that felt like that again, where he would just sort of pick up and get in his jet and go wherever he needed to go. So I did like this quite a bit. I was surprised. And then the backup story, I'm trying to remember what happened in.
Is the little kid realizing that the scarecrow toxin is getting into his school's ventilation system.
That's right. I thought it looked really good. Mike Norton's. Oh, they're right. The kid was like the head of the Batman Club.
Right. Well, I'm guessing head and lone member.
Right.
Didn't seem like he had a ton of friends.
But he gets to team up with Batman. I thought it was a really sweet story. What was the name of the club? Batman, the Public Middle School 96 Junior Batman Detective Club. Yeah. He's the president, founding member, and the.
But I also thought it was an interesting choice. I thought that, like, there's a lot of references to the fact that the Wayne Foundation funds a large parts of this school, like all the food in the cafeteria is like supplied by the Wayne Foundation, blah, 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 blah. So it's like, so wait a second. So the Wayne Foundation is like funding schools that still suck and like are full of asbestos. Like, they were only built recently, but are full of asbestos. Like, we're not still using asbestos anymore to build things. If it's a recent building, it shouldn't have that.
Was it built recently?
It said something about how, like, I mean, because it had been built in the wake of, one of Scarecrow's attacks and been put on the land or something like that. I thought anyway.
It was built on an old Scarecrow hideout, which had his gas or his stuff seeped in the. I mean, who knows how long it's been? And in Gotham City, there are no building rules. They'll use asbestos. Right,
but it's just weird to me that if it's funded by the Wayne Foundation, you would think. I mean, we obviously Wayne Tech is the for-profit arm that's run by Lucius Fox. I guess maybe this is me showing my cards as a nonprofit director. I want to know who's running the nonprofit arm of the Wayne Foundation, if they're still.
He doesn't have time for this. He has to go fight the Joker.
I know, but that's what I'm saying.
Monitor all the projects.
He needs to get an external. I'm guessing Bruce Wayne is the chair of the board of the Wayne Foundation, but that means they still have a day-to-day operational executive director. Who's that, and are they hiring?
Well, good question. When I was in high school, when I was in, I want to say sophomore year, they found asbestos in the school, and we had our year start 2 weeks late while they cleaned it out. And I was being very smug to my friends at the other schools who were going to school, and my summer lasted 2 weeks longer until we got there the first day. And they told us, as a result, almost all of our Monday holidays were canceled that year.
Oh, that stinks.
So it ended up being a really rough year. And also asbestos.
Well, the California State rock, your new home state's rock, is an asbestos-bearing mineral.
Which makes sense. Let's move on to another annual Batman Superman World's Finest 2025 annual number 1. This is part 3 of the We Are Yesterday crossover with Justice League Unlimited. This is story by Mark Waid and Christopher Cantwell, which is what the last part was. Now, this one is written by Christopher Cantwell, as opposed to Mark Waid, with art by Dan McDade. And I like Christopher Cantwell a lot. I read almost all of his books. I thought you could tell that this wasn't Mark Waid. It didn't have that Mark Waid Silver Agey elan. Didn't have that sparkle to it.
Agree.
It wasn't bad, but it didn't feel like this book. However, I quite liked it. I liked the Dan McCade art, and I loved the cliffhanger. I loved the cliffhanger. It was the first time in a while where I was like, I want the next issue. So in this storyline, obviously, Gorilla Grodd as mucking with time. The world's finest art parts take place in the past. In the last issue of Justice League Unlimited, he brought forth to the present day old, sort of Bronze Agey versions of the Legion of Doom, so Lex Luthor and Joker and Sinestro, et cetera, et cetera. In this issue, we find out how he does it. He goes back and gets them, and there's all kinds of adventures happening there. And in the course of fighting the Legion of Doom, Grodd zaps Robin with his time gun, shooting him into the present. And the cliffhanger is he's now on the watchtower, and he sees Batman, and he calls out the Batman, and Batman is surprised to see him, and then we see Nightwing there as well. So we have older Dick Grayson and younger Dick Grayson together.
Here's the question:
wouldn't he not be Nightwing though? But it doesn't matter. It's comics.
The question this book made me think about is, it's only happened because there's a page where Sinestro and Scarecrow are standing next to each other. Sinestro is not the Yellow Lantern for Sector 2814. He's when he was Green Lantern, he was from a different sector. Otherwise, he and Hal Jordan wouldn't have overlapped as Green Lanterns. Right. So, who's the Yellow Lantern for Sector 2814 if not Scarecrow? Wouldn't he be the optimal choice to have a yellow ring as part of Sinestro? Wasn't he in that story? But why isn't he still? To me, that was like such an obvious. He should always have a.
Because there are no more Yellow Lantern. I mean, that's happening in the other books. There are no more other cores. But in this book, he's just Sinestro pre all that. He just has that ring, that evil ring that was yellow.
Yeah.
This is prior to the other cores.
I also don't know if he's not the Green Lantern or even the Yellow Lantern assigned to this sector. Why is he spending so much time on Earth? It seems like of all the villains here, that Earth should be small potatoes for Sinestro. He should be off doing bigger things.
He hates Hal Jordan. So what did you think of the art in this Dan McCade art?
I struggled with it, honestly.
Yeah.
I thought the character models were inconsistent in ways that didn't take me out of the story, but I just didn't think it. I mean, yeah, I thought it worked really well for the zanier, like the Jokers and the Plastic Mans, like the wackier, less human shaped people. But I thought it made the characters are supposed to be just like on model white dudes. Your Lex, your Superman, your Flash look off.
At one point, he gave Superman like a flat boxer's nose.
Mm-hmm.
It does worry me a little bit that the art in this book has been incredibly inconsistent since Dan Moore left. They haven't found a consistent, solid artist to be on the book. Even, I mean, I get it. You might want to change up artists arc to arc, but the art styles and the quality's been so all over the place since Moore left, which has been a bummer. But I did like it though. I thought there was interesting things about it. I didn't love it. I think you're right. The funnier stuff worked better, but it has a kind of interesting sort of Kyle Baker quality.
I can see that. Liked. But I mean, I think that also ties into me saying that the Plastic Man pages are the stronger pages.
Now, whether that's appropriate for this particular book is we can debate that. That can be debated. But
and what did you think of the backup?
It was fine. It was from Morgan Hampton and Clayton Henry. Clayton Henry's terrific. I'd been fine if he'd drawn the main story, but it's just another sort of John Stewart origin story. I'm not sure why we did it.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out why it was happening. I was like, wait, because it's not like we've been doing origin stories. It's just like, what was the point of it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, is it going to be important, or is it just we needed to fill pages? I don't know. It was like, it wasn't bad, but it was also like, why is this happening? So I don't know. I have nothing negative to say about it. Just confused. I didn't, there's so many different origins for John Stewart that I don't care about another one. Might as well, but just weird.
Yeah. Has he canonically had a stutter before?
I don't remember that. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm an expert on John Stewart's early life, but a stutter and what was wrong with his legs?
I mean, he just wore Forrest Gump braces. Well, there was no intro to. I guess if you know that Jon Stewart is from Detroit, I missed that, and I thought for a second when they were calling him John, like, is this John Henry Irons? Like, which Black heroic John are we following right now? And it took me a minute.
Fallen Arches.
Oh, this is
for Fallen Arches. You have to wear a whole leg brace. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. You're the doctor.
I was gonna say me neither, but not that kind of doctor.
Yeah, it looked great. Love Clayton Henry, but just whatever. I guess we'll see if they're doing another one next. Or there's just some random thing they did, but
yeah.
I'm still really liking this We Are Yesterday storyline. I think it's fun to go back and forth. I think it's fun that they are finding a way to keep these chapters in the past when technically this book takes place in the past. I mean, I'd be fine if they didn't, but I think it's fun that they are figuring that out.
I really liked that Grodd just picked one of the villains in the Injustice League, Cheetah, to be like the sacrifice. He's like, yeah. Like screw you, you're not coming with us. Like I'm like, we're bad guys. I don't care.
Someone's got to be the fall guy. Sorry.
I thought that was funny. Like that genuinely, I was like, oh, that's nice. Like it's nice that like the villains are truly villainous. I would
have been much happier if he picked Bizarro, but that's fine. That's just me.
Yeah. You mean you would have been much sadder if he picked Bizarro?
Who was this woman? I don't know who she was.
I didn't know who she was either.
Pythoness. Why did I say it like that? Python.
Cobra Law.
Pythoness. Maybe she is a Cobra Law character. I have no idea who she is. I've never seen her before in my life. That's just the way it goes. Let's take another quick break. When we come back, we got more comics to talk about.
She's apparently... She's got a page on like she's one of the Beyonders. Is that I know there's the Beyonder as a Marvel character, but I don't know who the Beyonders are in the DC context.
Wolverine and Kitty Pryde. I thought about checking this out. This is a Chris Claremont as the writer, and the cover by Alan Davis. And if Alan Davis had drawn the inside, I would have read it. But I looked at the Damian Cucchiero art, and I thought, that doesn't seem right. That style seems wrong for Chris Claremont's X-Men, so I didn't read it.
Yeah, I read it just because, as discussed on the show before, on weeks when it's my pick, I try to read as broad a suite of books as I have time for, just to make sure I've captured all the potential options for pick. I thought this was a fun throwbacky issue. Like it's Claremont has such a singular voice when it comes to X-Men comics, and it was soapy, it was teen drama-y. I had fun with it. It wasn't, it didn't knock my socks off, but I enjoyed going back to that era of the X-Men. And also, kimonos just look so comfortable, Connor. Why are we not kimono people?
So, what was the premise of this book? What was the story?
It's set in when Logan is living in Japan with Kitty and her father and a bunch of his Japanese teammates, fellow fighters. So he's he's trying to train Kitty in the way of the ninja. So getting her those skills, and she's an angsty teen. She's very much in her
Shadowcat era.
A jerk. Yep, Shadowcat era. So she's training with Logan some of the time, and then she's also going to a Japanese school to get some exposure to the culture and spend time with kids her own age. And there's like an assassination attempt on one of the kids in her school. And so she and Logan fight off the assassins, and it's very much like, he's trying to get her to fight better. She's trying to get him not to use his claws to kill people. Right. And then they end by giving Kitty her Shadowcat costume. And then there's like a weird thing where she's asleep and wakes up and enters Logan's room, and it's full of snow. And suddenly they're like in this snowy expanse where they're going to have an adventure in apparently in feudal Japan. So they're kind of ends back in time with Kitty in samurai armor and Logan giving them context about like, oh, I'm dressed as this and you're dressed as that and you're dressed as this and we must be in this era, and they're going to go do feudal Japan things. It
sounds fun.
It was different. It was not a bad hang.
I don't think I've ever asked you, are you a Claremont X-Men guy? Did you read a lot of the books?
No,
before your
time.
time.
I'm a little young for that era, but I certainly recognize the importance of them, and I've read enough of them. Plus, I watched the cartoon, which I felt like the cartoon was very inspired by the Claremont era, the '90s cartoon.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So that was sort of my main entree into the X-Men as soap opera dynamic. But no, I definitely came in more in the Jim Lee era.
Well, Jim Lee and Claremont that was the same thing.
True, I think of Jim Lee as kind of the end, like it's a transitional.
It's the end of it, but it's still Claremont. It's the end of the
so.
Claremont era. It's the second half. I mean, you think of Byrne and Claremont in the first half, and then there were obviously other artists, but
I read
Claremont was still guiding everything when Jim Lee came on.
Yeah, and I read some of the Grant Morrison stuff when it was first like actually coming out, and then I would say I was not a consistent X-Men reader until the Joss Whedon, John Cassaday series, and that was
Astonishing X-Men.
Astonishing, yep.
Let's talk about Fantastic Four 724 or 31, and a very surprised Sue Storm on the cover. Written by Ryan North.
Can you just use her as the thumbnail on the YouTube video?
Corey, yeah, maybe. Ryan North, Corey Smith on art, Oren Jr. on inks, and Jesus Aburtov and Joey C. So this is the continuing quest to get Ben Grimm his powers back, or at least his manifestation, his physical rock form.
Which I find it's such a fascinating flip.
It is, because you'd think their sex lives instantly improved.
She's a sculptor, Connor. She likes working with clay.
Well, I mean, it's the whole idea of identity. His identity is the thing. He's it's hard when you're the strong, powerful, tough guy, then you go to be normal. Where's your place in the world? And so they and I don't remember. I've read a lot of Fantastic Four comics, but not all of them. And I didn't know the idea that if one loses their powers, they all start to lose them. Like they're intrinsically linked from that event. And so now that Ben doesn't have his powers, they're all starting to fade. Johnny, falls out of the sky.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts for Reed to stretch. That was interesting because I hadn't known about that.
Yeah, and I also really liked that cosmic rays from alternate dimensions don't work. Like that, to me, it ties into that idea that like you can't take the Infinity Stones to a different dimension and use them. Those sort of things only work in your home turf. I like that.
Yeah, so they go into space in the.
Okay.
I once again broke my chair. They go into space in the multiverse to try to get
exposed to the cosmic rays.
Expose Ben to the cosmic rays. It seems like not a great idea to also bring the kids and Alicia, because they could be exposed as well. Maybe the ship is shielded, but it just seems like a bad idea.
Yeah.
But I always kind of like, there's this, we all love Ben Grimm, right? He's like a great guy and everything, but there's always kind of a little bit of strain of selfishness in him every once in a while. And so here he makes a bad choice because he really wants his powers back and may have fucked everything up by sending them back to the original timeline, and therefore making it so the original Fantastic Four don't get their powers, and then that causes them to blink out of existence, like Nightwing should blink out of existence in Batman and Superman.
Now I'm just gonna say, I'm sure Ryan North listens to the show. Ryan,
yeah, absolutely.
If you need help, if you need a co-writer for a series that continues to follow the adventures of the shark version of the Fantastic Four, I'm there. I will help you write that.
That was fun because going through the multiverse, you get to play with that and you see some, fun scenes of different people as the Fantastic Four, different versions of them, scrolls.
I think people. I mean, sharks are already like good at being invisible. I think a shark that can stretch should terrify anyone who ever wants to go into the ocean ever again.
I think a lot of things. We used to at iFanboy talk about flying sharks and whether that would shut the world down if suddenly sharks took to the air. But
well, I mean, Jason Aaron is famous for his space sharks, so.
I just like that this book continues to play with science concepts, and
agreed. That's what I was talking about. Julie was asking me sort of what the state of comics were over dinner, and I said, well, I think one of the best books right now is Ryan North's Fantastic Four, because it's science adventures more as much as it is superheroics. And
it's superhero science, but it's also real science. It's a mixture of both. It's multiverse, it's cosmic rays, it's predestination, and all. Like it's interesting that that he's still doing. I didn't love the Corey Smith art. It was fine. It did its job. It told the story. The characters were fine. I didn't love it. But I just kind of like that Ben Grimm is a great guy, but he will occasionally be selfish and do the wrong thing.
And I think that's, there's a truth to that for all I would say 3 out of 4 of them. Reed is often selfish about his science projects. Johnny is just a immature, selfish person. Sue is often foisted into the role of being the mature, responsible one out of all 4 of them, which is interesting. And
yeah, I think this is good. This is very good. And the great thing about this book is I never know where it's going. And that's a big benefit.
I would like Johnny to shave.
I really hate the mustache. I know Josh loves the mustache. At this point, I'm over the mustache. It was funny at first, but now it annoys me. And,
also, it's always fun to remember that the letters, we were talking about letters columns earlier. The letters column of Fantastic Four is where George R.R. Martin had his first published writing.
Just like Tom King on iFanboy.com.
There you go.
All right, that's a good place to take a quick break. We'll talk to you about how you can help support the show. We are a listener-supported endeavor, and that primary way you can do that is patreon.com/iFanboy. It's our primary function in terms of support. It's where you can join a great community on Discord and Facebook. You can vote on the Patron Pick. You can get a Patron Power live on the show. You can be part of the monthly Patron Hangout, which we just had a couple weeks ago. At the $10 or higher level, you get an ad-free version of this show. Plus, you get that show a day early on Saturday. Plus, you get an ad-free version of all the shows. Plus, you get access to the iFanboy after show on Sundays, where we talk about all of the books we didn't make the show's rundown. The $10 and up is the place to be. There's a discount if you sign up for 1 full year, and now you can send and receive gift memberships, which has been happening, which has been awesome. A lot of significant others sending patrons to their significant others, which has been cool. If you want to do that, go to patreon.com/iFanboy/gift. Thanks for being a patron. We love the patrons. Josh and I try to spend as much time in the Discord as we can, and it's a really, really nice community of people. And they're always happy when a new member shows up. Very welcoming group. We like them. iFanboy.threadless.com is our t-shirt store. Well, it's our merch store, but primarily people buy t-shirts. We got 22 designs, including our 2 new ones, the one celebrating iFanboy 2025. You can find those there. iFanboy.threadless.com. We have a new design coming, I believe, in July. There'll be a 23rd design. It's all ready to go. We were just releasing it in July. So check that out at iFanboy.threadless.com. iFanboy.com/support is a digital tip jar via PayPal. If you just want to throw a couple bucks in, you want to be a patron, you don't want to buy a shirt, that's fine. We appreciate that. If you need to offload cash for tax purposes or government reasons, that's also fine. We'll take all currencies at all levels, and we will figure out the tax problems on our end. Don't worry about it. If you're worried about us, don't worry about it. That's what we're telling you. iFanboy.com/Amazon is where you can do some shopping. You can find links to all kinds of things on the website to shop for, and we get a piece of that action. Appreciate that. Bookshop.org is our partner to help local bookstores. You can find those links on the Booksplode posts, and when you go there, local bookstores will fulfill your order instead of a giant conglomerate, and that's great. In fact, the other day when they announced the pre-sale of the hardcover of the Darwin Cook's The Spirit, the complete collection, which I'm so excited for, it was cheaper at Bookshop than it was at Amazon. So you never know. Check it out. Thanks for everyone who supports us. We appreciate it. And now this is a very exciting moment. Kaiju Corner. It's the first ever Kaiju Corner. We're going to talk about 2 Godzilla books. 2 terrific Godzilla books this week, I have to say.
Yeah, and it's not every day you get a new corner here at iFanboy. So
it's true. The first one is Godzilla vs. Spider-Man, #1. This is the latest in the Godzilla vs. series. This is by Joe Kelly and Nick Bradshaw. This one takes place squarely in the 80s. We had 60s, 70s. Now we're in the 80s with Spider-Man in his black suit. And this was written such like an 80s Marvel comic. It made me really happy. It had a ton of editor's notes. It was super soapy.
Well, I was going to say, yeah,
super melodramatic.
One of my first comments was about this was like, Felicia Hardy needs to get some chill. Like, she is blowing up Peter's spot.
No, it's the other way around. They're dating. It's Mary Jane blowing up Peter's spot. They're together. Mary Jane was in Hollywood.
Mary Jane's in Peter's apartment, though.
That was been a problem for Peter if it hadn't been for Godzilla destroying the building. So, Peter's swinging around town in his black suit, feeling pretty happy. This is soon after the events of Secret Wars where he got the black suit. I mean, there are some definite continuity implications of this comic that I'm just not worrying about, but there's some definitely things that contradict what happened.
And I know, I think it's becoming a bit of a trope to like throw a symbiote on something that hasn't had a symbiote suit before, but like venomized or symbioteized Godzilla was pretty sick.
So that was the whole thing was that they're fighting. Godzilla shows up, and I really like that Godzilla is a thing in the Marvel universe in these books. It's not like every issue it's like, oh my god, what is this thing? It's like they know who Godzilla is. He's been around, and so he's like, oh man, Godzilla's back. And so then he's trying to get Godzilla to leave, and Godzilla does the roar at him, which you all just heard, which causes the suit to freak out because, as we know, the suit doesn't, the Venom doesn't like the sonics, and so it jumps off of Peter, which has never happened before. And attaches itself to Godzilla. So now Godzilla's all venomized. He's got a creepy long tongue and all kinds of problems.
And even a Godzilla-ified version of the chest logo.
I liked it. I love Nick Bradshaw, but I thought his Spider-Man was a little chunky. Mm-hmm. He's a little, he's not fat, obviously, but he's just a little squat when Peter should be really live.
Kind of John Romita Sr.
Not even. It just seems like more like a Thor body than a Spider-Man body. But that's fine. That's his style. I just liked the melodrama. I loved him and Black Cat with their big overwrought, makeout session, and then Mary Jane showing up out of nowhere, and then who's this, and then that whole like scene where Black Cat shows up, and then there's I love the icy word balloons.
Mm-hmm.
Those are so it's just it was fun. It was just really fun. These have all been terrific, but I really love this one quite a bit.
Yeah, this is really fun.
They had to have Null show up, or was that the name of the guy?
I think so. The king of the symbiotes or whatever.
I hate that stuff, but whatever. Everything else was great. It even had sort of an origin for what's his name, Eddie getting the suit, which I feel like happens in a different way. It doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, the other, you've mentioned there were continuity implications. If the idea is that the symbiote retains some of, like, the reason that Venom has Spider-Man's powers is because the symbiote, in amplifying Peter's powers, retained those powers and gave them to the next host. So shouldn't Eddie Brock then also have Godzilla powers?
Well, it doesn't matter because this is all out of continuity, but it's just like, I was trying to make it work, but then I realized, this is actually not happening in the regular Marvel universe. It's happening in the side one where Godzilla exists, so it doesn't matter. Stop worrying about it. Sometimes I have to remind myself that and have a conversation during my comic book reading. This was just incredibly fun. I love all these books that you can pick them up, you can drop them. There's like a tiny light bit of continuity only in that they take place in the same world where Godzilla is, but you can read whatever ones you want. And the next issue is X-Men in the 90s, all looking Jim Lee up. Godzilla versus Los Angeles. This is part of the Godzilla versus America series that RDW's been publishing. This featured 4 stories. The first written and drawn by Gabriel Harbin, which I haven't seen him in forever. That was awesome. I love this comic. I thought this was great. What did you think of this one?
Yeah, I like Gabe's story probably the best. The second story by Jordan Morris. He's a fellow podcaster, so nice to see him get to do. I'm guessing the second story about a studio lot tour guide is largely autobiographical for Jordan.
Well, I mean, I think almost all these were pretty autobiographical, except for that first one.
Yeah, and then that third one about basically a PSA for the LA Metro system through the lens of a kaiju attack was kind of funny. I thought the last story in this was very strange, of the studio PA putting together a mecha to fight Godzilla.
Yeah, it was fun though. It was like, because ultimately this was a love letter to LA, and all the proceeds from this comic go to a charity that's helping bookstores and comic stores that were affected by the fires. So the Gabriel Harbin story is about a helicopter reporter
who gets stuck on Godzilla while the
city is
trying to
covering
fight.
Godzilla. Yeah. In fact, ends up having to bail out of the chapter, jumping onto Godzilla and reporting via his phone from on top of Godzilla. So, wonderful work in that one. Wonderful perspective when he's hanging off the side of him.
The scale of the monster feels.
It just shows how good he is. He's so good. And then the second story was again about like a aspiring actress who is a tour guide at a studio, and then one of her favorite directors shows up on the tour with his family, and right then Godzilla attacks, and so she uses her
director of the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Basically, yes, uses her charm and the skills to save everybody, and ends up getting a small part in this movie. And that was sweet. And then the Dave Baker one was the history of the subway in LA under the guise of a Godzilla attack. And there are lots of people in LA who are evangelists of the subway, and they are all as annoying as the narrator in this story. But
wait, as a New Yorker, are you not pro subway in LA?
Not in LA. I'm pro in small dense cities that can use them, like New York and Boston and DC and Chicago. But LA is too sprawled to ever have an effective subway. But also, it doesn't go anywhere, like the story says, and it's at this point a rolling drug den. But it was an interesting story, and the history of the subway in LA is very fascinating, and I thought it was well done. And then the final one was like, this is a town full of amazing artists and artisans and people who can make things with their hands and create, and so they band together to make a kaiju robot to fight Godzilla. I thought, it was fun. I thought this was a great issue. I really did. I would have maybe even thought about it as my pick of the week if I had the week. I didn't really decide what I would have done, but I just thought it was terrific. I also just loved Hardman. I love the variety of styles in it. I thought it was just a really fun comic. So there you go. So that was the comics. Those are the comics we wanted to talk about. But at patreon.com/iFanboy, every patron gets a vote to add a book to the rundown. This week we had a tie for the winner for the patron pick. We ended up flipping a coin, and the winner was The Savage Sword of Conan number 8.
By Crumb.
This is the second time The Savage Sword of Conan has been the pick of the week. I believe a patron pick. I believe the first issue was also patron pick. Let me just confirm that. I believe the first issue was. That's how we got onto it. Have you been reading this book?
I've not. This was the first issue I've read of the series.
Okay, so this I can't find it right now. So this featured 4 comic stories. These books are always giant. They're published by Titan Comics. It always features sort of not multimedia, but 3 or 4 comic stories, maybe a prose story, a lot of pinups. You get your bang for your buck with The Savage Sword of Conan.
Yes, you do.
And this one featured this one had 4 comic stories, one by Dennis Culver, drawn by Chris Burnham, one written by Fred Kennedy, drawn by Marco Rudy. A non-Conan, there's usually a non-Conan story. This was written by Zach Davison with art by Max von Fafner, and then a Liam Sharp written and drawn story at the end. I thought this was terrific, and I thought the Burnham story was, I think, the best in the book. But man, it's so funny to see when you see someone who is just so much better than a lot of other people, doing a character that you've never seen him do before, like the action sequences, the perspective on the art, just how much better it was than even some of the really terrific art in this issue.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the art on the second story was really pretty, but wasn't good for storytelling.
It was a problem. A problem. It was too much going on. It was too jam-packed. It was really hard to follow what was happening. It didn't work comics-wise. You're totally right about that.
And then I'd not heard of Cormac Fitzgeoffrey as a Robert E. Howard character.
Every Robert E. Howard character is basically Conan, so I just assume that he is another descendant of Conan.
Yeah, I mean, I was thrown off because, like, Conan stories I always think of as taking place around the same time that, like, the Bible was happening. Like, that's sort of the era I put them in mentally. And so this was very clearly, medieval knights. They're talking about Gaul. They're talking about Crusades. They're talking about Normans. And I was like, wait, what? Like, how's Conan fit into this? And of course he doesn't. Did you read the prose story?
No, I skipped it. In the past, they've had the stories of the character's name I never remember, but who's a Puritan who is basically Conan again. So I just assume in my head they're all Conan's descendants somehow. Yeah, he's bedded enough ladies. There's got to be a lot of them.
Which was I don't know how much you know about the life and times of Robert E. Howard, but he had a tough go of it, and I think is working out some of his issues with these characters, including his probably very repressed homosexuality. So
This was the second comic in as many weeks, or not as many weeks, maybe it was the week before, but where an indestructible person is taken down by being stabbed in the mouth. It happened in Wolverine 400, and here in the Chris Burnham story, Conan's facing this indestructible demon lady who can't be stabbed, so he ends up stabbing her in the mouth, and it worked that way.
Also, do you know that Robert E. Howard was pen pals with H.P. Lovecraft?
That's not surprising.
True story. I love Liam Sharp's art. I find that his writing style, I almost think ironically for someone who does as detailed artwork as he does, his stories are still over wordy. Like, dude, your drawings tell this story well enough. Just let the drawings speak for themselves. But I thought that was also a pretty solid.
I like that story.
Thankfully,
Conan,
short.
Kind of Conan fighting a proto Viking.
Well, it's a guy who, I think, it's a Viking who is dying, but he is dying in such a way that he won't get to Valhalla. So he basically has to goad Conan into a fight so that he dies in battle, so that he gets to go to Valhalla, which was like, that's cool.
And then I liked the Sir Joffrey. What the fuck was that guy's name?
Cormac
Fitzjoffrey.
Fitzsimmons.
I thought that was good. I thought it was a good story. I thought this was the Fred Kennedy, Michael Rudy one didn't really work because the art was too much, but everything else I thought was really, really strong. I mean, I've read all these issues and they can vary in quality as all these anthologies do.
And I think the thing that always gets me about a Conan comic is obviously iFanboy is on record as we love a fantasy map, but there's something about that prologue of the Numidian Chronicles, the Noah Prince, in the years before Atlantis sank, like. I read that every time I start a Conan book, and it just totally gets me in the right headspace. Like, it puts me in the mood for a Conan comic in a way that, like, most other comics don't have that sort of, okay, here's your appetizer to get you ready for the main dish. And it has such a strong effect on me mentally when I'm getting into these books that it just makes me always love a Conan comic that much more for the little special sauce.
I don't know. It's the special power of the barbarian story. The weird sciencey fantasy reality history of the book. And
well, it sort of reminded me, like, I always feel like the way that magic works in Conan. You had a post on Instagram earlier this week about, like, understanding when prehistoric people saw things like rainbows. Like, of course you would freak out, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the magic in Conan is more like that. It's less high fantasy, and it's more just like, no, we just didn't know how the world worked back then. So, like, creepy stuff was even creepier and came across as magical and weird and monstrous. And I also just love, like, I love the philosophy of Crom, like, as Conan's patron god of, like, Crom doesn't really care about you, but he gives you just enough strength to solve the problem yourself. Like, bye, Crom.
It was good. It was one of the better ones. There have been some really terrific issues of this, but this was one of the better ones. I'd love to see more Chris Burnham Conan stories. I mean, he seemed really well suited to the madness of those kind of things, and Conan being along for a heist to find out there's no heist. They're actually there to save the guy's girlfriend, and he gets mad, but end up having to save her anyway. And I love when a Conan story ends with, like, there's this extra piece of the story that that is going to play out later in Conan's life, but we don't have time to get into it now. But eventually, there's going to be another. That's another story.
Exactly. I love when they do that.
They did that actually in the Godzilla vs. Spider-Man too, which is fun. It's the never-ending nature of these things. So,
also, like, I would love for somebody to try to put together a timeline of Conan's entire life, because, like, the guy has lived 3 or 4 lifetimes, especially considering back then, and he still manages to make it to kinghood before going fully gray on top. So he's got.
I think you should do that.
All right,
sounds like a good project for you.
Sure.
Turn it into an academic paper. You can get your doctorate in Conanology.
There you go.
How does that work? Can you just decide to get a doctorate in something like that?
Yeah, if you were, like, getting a degree in, like, English literature or something, or you can get my father-in-law has a PhD in English literature, so
there you go. Get him on it.
Okay.
All right. So the Savage Sword of Conan number 8. Ratings out of 5. I'm giving it a 4. 4 out of
5. I think a 4 is correct.
Solid 4. It's incredibly fun. Next question: were you reading it without it being the Patron Pick? Yes, I've read every issue of these.
No, I was. But I'm glad I did. I'm happy.
And finally, are you sticking with it, Ryan? Would you read the Savage Sword of Conan number 9?
Yeah, I might.
All right, I'm going to as well. I've been reading them all. I'm going to continue reading it. I'm not like the world's biggest Conan fan, but I grew up in the 80s. And I'm a guy. There's like always a part of me that loves Conan the Barbarian. That's just the way it goes. I stumbled on Red Sonja the other night on TV, the Brigitte Nielsen, Arnold Schwarzenegger, not a Conan, but also Conan movie. And I hadn't seen that since I saw it in the theaters.
I think Robert E. Howard was a Conan guy as well, which was part of the reason he had trouble in West Texas where he was living.
So there you go. Patreon.com/iFanboy. Thanks for voting, patrons. Thanks for being patrons. We appreciate that. But if you give I've lost my train of thought. I was thinking about Conan. If you give it the $5 or higher level on patreon.com/iFanboy, you get a superpower live on the show. It's bestowed upon you by one of us. And this week, power goes to Kevin Miller.
Kevin Miller has a small black hole that follows him around that can be used to deposit refuse and waste of any non-living items. So, Kevin's out walking the dog, dog's poops, there's not a trash can nearby, but he's got the little baggie, throws in the black hole, goes to get
so
a mail.
So he can't toss a human in it like Conan's buddy in that.
So I was thinking of this in terms of like how in the 90s in the X-Men, like the characters that could like charge up, like Gambit, he can't charge up organic items with his power. He can't make a person explode. So that's
like Firestorm. Firestorm can't change a human.
So it's a similar limitation for Kevin. He can't use.
So let me ask you some questions, and keeping in mind that physics is not my area of expertise. But
sure,
does this black hole not start to suck in the world around it?
No, it doesn't. It's a stable singularity that just kind of hovers around him, follows him around wherever.
What happens if you get too close to it?
He's fine. He's immune to it.
What about other people?
They might feel the pull, but they won't get sucked in. They're safe from crossing the event horizon. Only Kevin can push objects past the event horizon.
What if you're playing catch with Kevin and the black hole is nearby with the ball? Would it suck the ball in?
Yeah, it could. That's a real risk.
Now, what if Kevin's walking on the street? Does like random refuse and litter just get sucked into, or what's the?
Not unless he wants it. If he wants it to, I think he has.
So he has to want to put it in.
Yeah, he has some control over putting things in there.
But
it's unretrievable. Like it is truly it's stuck in the black hole. It's a singularity. It's a collapsed.
So it's not a wormhole.
No, well, it might be. We don't know. That's an open question about black holes. Do black holes come out somewhere else?
I think you should go and find out.
There's a theoretical white hole. So there's an idea that the birth of a black hole in our universe is the Big Bang for another universe in the membrane theory of cosmology. So a black hole is the white hole Big Bang of a smaller side hustle universe.
I feel like sometimes scientists want the universe to be much more exciting than it actually is.
It's a lot of empty space.
There's a lot of science fiction in science.
If you look at the numbers, the majority of the universe is just hydrogen and helium. It's just those two atoms, and that's about it.
So
hydrogen, helium, empty space.
Could he take it like in a car?
Yeah.
So
it's with him all the time.
Right. But the car's not going to get sucked into the black hole.
No.
Unless he wants it to.
He'd have to you can't pick up a car and throw it into the trash can.
So he has to physically throw it in. He can't just be like.
He has to get it close enough
Professor Xavier it in.
He has to get it close enough that I think if like in moments of great stress, like if there was like heaven forbid if there was like a shooting and in the stress of that moment, I think the bullets would automatically just go into the hole for him because the power would.
Well, if I shot a gun at the hole, the bullet's going to go in the hole, even if unless it bounces off because he. A lot of questions for Kevin, but this is an interesting power.
I think if Kevin really practiced and got really good, he could have things in orbit around the hole, which would be kind of neat.
I think you want Kevin on your beach cleanup. I think he could do a lot of good for his town if he spent a Saturday totally walking around with one of those grabbers for trash.
There's never any litter in Kevin's little mini universe. I think I was thinking in terms of even like. You know how you go and you go to the store and you get something and they give you a receipt and you're like, I don't need this receipt. And then you got to figure out where the trash can. And so like Kevin just receipt taken care of.
Patreon.com/iFanboy. Thanks, Kevin, for being a patron. We appreciate it. And feel free to join today at the $5 higher level and get your superpower live on the show. Someone wrote in recently and asked if they could get a new power from you because they really liked your powers, but the answer is no. I'm sorry. Once you have your power, it's locked in.
Wow.
So
honored. Thank you.
It was a request specifically for Orion power.
I can give them a fake dissertation title. I do that a lot. We did that on Science Sort of where we give fake dissertation topics.
All right, so let's do one email. We have one today from Dan C. from Madison, New Jersey. Dan writes in and says, Mark Waid tells us that the rolling timeline of the Marvel Universe means that when reading an old issue, we're supposed to replace then contemporary references with more modern ones that fit the timeline of about 12 years since Fantastic Four crash landed. With that in mind, the Avengers couldn't have gone on Letterman to boost Wonder Man's career. Which late night show did they go on? Can't be Leno, right? What cast of SNL did Spider-Man team up with in the current timeline, since the original not ready for primetime players are right out? I've been thinking about this since I got back from seeing Kong an indeterminate number of years ago. So this is the dilemma of the rolling timeline.
Yes.
Funnily enough, so Mark Waid recently came up with this idea when they did a new history of the Marvel Universe where they replaced the Vietnam War with the Sian Kong War and moved everything ahead. Funnily enough, Mark Waid also was responsible for the DC concept of hypertime, which I don't think they use anymore, but they did for a long time, which was that everything has happened. And so it just happens in this mystical, magical thing called hypertime, where things in the Golden Age happened, but they also happen. The modern age thing also happened, and
I've also always assumed internally, we all have our own internal continuity. I always assumed that the 616 has a 36 to 48 hour day. Like, I think because of the amount of stuff that happens in a given day in the life of any of these characters, like they have to have twice the amount of time to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like this concept, but I'll play the game. I prefer they don't tether it so strongly to something like this, because it just gets dumb, especially since so many characters are really tied into World War II. I just think the idea of trying to make Marvel make sense like that will never work. So trying to make it work is like a common comic thing that'll never happen. Just drive you crazy.
And I'm with you, where I care less about the pop culture implications of this than I do the sort of actual history. Like the war.
I just don't worry about it. Like, it just, it's a thing. If you're going to enjoy these, and we're going to get to Dan's game in 1 second, but if you're going to enjoy these books, it's all got to be malleable, and it's all got to have happened in this way that could never be possible anyway. And
here's the thought that I have about where this sort of taking this idea fully to its logical conclusion. Theoretically, if we don't kill ourselves or end the earth or whatever, if we survive this moment in time into the future, eventually we're going to reach the year 2099, and what the hell happens then? Is it still Peter Parker? Like, right? Or is it Miguel O'Hara?
It's no different. It's no different than, like, in the 60s Star Trek having Khan be from a starship that was launched in the 90s. Like, what happened when the movie came around and we were like almost like just it is what it is. But okay, so if you're not aware, there was a comic book in the 80s where the Avengers went on David Letterman to help promote Wonder Man's career, and there was a comic book where Spider-Man teamed up with the original Not Ready for Primetime Players, which was the original cast of Saturday Night Live. If we're using the 12-year timeline, then I think Spider-Man, let's say 10 years ago, so that would put him with the 40th year cast. So that would be like Kate McKinnon and Kenan Thompson and Bobby Moynihan, and that was the first year where Michael Che and Colin Jost were featured players, and Pete Davidson was a featured player, and Leslie Jones was a featured player, and Kyle Mooney and Beck Bennett and Sashir Zamata. Like, this is a solid cast. Vanessa Bayer, A.D. Bryant, Jay Farrow, Cecily Strong. This was a very strong cast, and that's the one he would have gone on if we were playing their Marvel's stupid game. In terms of Letterman, that's trickier. 10 years ago.
I mean, 10 years ago was when Seth Meyers got his start on a late night show, and he actually is a comic book guy. So I feel like he would, like, he's had like Tom King and Grant Morrison on his show in real life. So I feel like Seth Meyers is who you send Wonder. I also feel like Wonder Man being kind of mid-tier, lower tier. Like, he doesn't get on the main late night show. He's got to go on.
Well, he was a superhero in the Avengers. So, I mean, it's either that or, like, 10 years ago was Jimmy Fallon. So he would have been on Jimmy Fallon's show. Jimmy Fallon's version of the Tonight Show. I mean, if you're talking about a bigger boost, I mean, again, these are almost all culturally relevant anyway, but then you would have gone on the Tonight Show and it would have been Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show.
You don't think Wonder Man would have just been on Conan Needs a Friend, just the podcast era?
Eventually, yes, absolutely. I do think he would have. But yeah, so Fallon started in 2014. So 10 years ago, 2015. This would have been Fallon's second year as host of the Tonight Show. So he would have been on, the Avengers would have been on that one. And they're New York based. Fallon's shows in New York. He's got a lot of New York people on, so that would have made sense.
So I mean, it's got to be. I'm Simon Williams, and I feel wonderful about being Conan O'Hyatt's friend.
There's all kinds of fun stuff you could do if you like. That's absolutely one thing that would happen.
Which of the Avengers goes on WTF and has to hash it out with Mark? It's a Vision. We good? We all right?
Clint Barton.
Yeah,
probably. Those are the kind of fun things that would be, that'd be fun to play with. Like, if someone did a book that was like super about
Clint, Iowa. You're from Iowa. What'd your old man do, Clint?
Pop culture, really. So Dancy, you made us our heads hurt.
I guess Tony Stark would be a good WTF guest too, since they could talk about their shared sobriety.
That's true. Thanks for writing in, Dancy. He wrote in making our heads hurt.
I like the game of figuring out which podcast the Avengers will go on.
That is an interesting one, for sure. So Dan wrote it into contact@ifanboy.com. That's how you get on the show. We appreciate you writing in, and we love having people on the show with your fun emails. So consider doing that today. Also, write it for our Media Splode. Put Media Splode in the subject line. Thank you very much. Let's do some plugs. 2 weeks ago, we had our Booksplode review of Judge Dredd: A Better World. That was, behind the feeds. You can check that out. This coming week, we're going to have our special edition review of Thunderbolts Asterisk. And we haven't recorded it yet, so I don't know who's going to be on it, but it'll come out. It'll come out one way or another. And then later this month, since we are now in May, you'll have Josh's Talksplode interview, and we'll have a new Media Splode subject to be determined at a later date.
You can find our whole library with a crap load of shows over at ifanboy.com or wherever podcasts are sold. Never miss a show and find out what the pick of the week is before the show comes out by following us on social media. That's right, social media. iFanboy Comics on Instagram and Threads, ifanboy.com on Blue Sky, and individually, you can follow us at Josh Kilpatrick on Instagram, at Ryan Haupt on Instagram, and at J.A. Flanagan for all the pictures of lighthouses you'll need moving forward in your life.
We have a lot of pictures of the sea. Please consider writing a review or leaving a star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on Pocket Cast, you need to be subscribed. You need to download a few episodes before you can do so, but thank you very much. Please consider subscribing to youtube.com/ifanboy, where I believe we're about 50 subs away from 5,000. And that's where you can watch the video version of this show, as well as our other podcasts. And you can also watch our old video show, which happened between 2007 and 2012. And those are all archived at youtube.com/ifanboy. Finally, you can join us in the iFanboy after show exclusively on Patreon. We'll share our thoughts on all the books we read that did make the rundown. And that's at patreon.com/ifanboy, exclusively for anyone at the $10 a month tier and up. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. My name is Connor.
And I'm Ryan.
See you next week.